Hello there, GB here, and welcome to Fast Forward, where I follow up on episodes of Rewind Classic Movies to look at what happened after those iconic films came out. Today we're diving back into the dark, disturbing, distressing, depressing, and absolutely incredible movie that is David Fincher's Seven. We'll look at everything from the sort of sequel, how the story was different in the book, and how there is a lot more backstory to all the characters and more graphic violence to be seen. So let's lazily put on our gun holster, move to New York and slice off our fingertips, don't do that, and fast forward to what happened after 1995's Seven. The graphic novel. If ever there was an appropriate medium for a Seven story, it would be a graphic novel, and this is graphic. This was a monthly series telling the stories behind the 7 sins shown in the movie, which came out in 2006 and 2007, and it tells them from the point of view of John Doe and his victims, and we learn a lot about them. Part 1, for example, sees how he set up the gluttony murder, but also that the victim himself was ashamed of his weight, which stemmed from childhood loss of his parents. The stories are intercut with pages from Doe's diaries, glimpsed at in the film. We find out Doe had a religious upbringing, almost fanatical. He compares himself to Jesus and is driven by religion. We also see him cutting off his fingertips and pulling out all of his teeth and replacing them with dentures so he could never be identified from dental records. We also see his comic book penis. We discover he was once married and lost a child as an infant. He had a law degree and used to wear a uniform for work, with a slight suggestion he may even have been a police officer. At one point he has key belongings like his wedding ring, kids' shoes and such in a cardboard box that he needs to empty, so he can make space for a head. And yes, in episode 6, Envy, we see him spying on Mills and his wife Tracy, and how he goes to their apartment to commit his final killings. Plural. Tracy buzzes him into their home after he tells her he is a fellow detective. She even makes him a cup of tea, and they chat as they drink with the empty cardboard box sat on the floor next to them. The final story in Chapter 7 has its most interesting and fascinating insight when John Doe loses his job and is disowned by his crazy mother, who then sets herself on fire. Doe seeks counsel from a priest whose words of reassurance about sin cement his hardcore beliefs and drive him onto his path of murder. If you've got the stomach for more Seven, these are going to be the best way to expand the story. The book. A novelization by Anthony Bruno was released alongside the film in 1995, but had some notable differences. There are expanded layers to a lot of scenes, getting into the minds of the characters and with extra dialogue. One of the key extra details is how Somerset compares himself to John Doe. Like in this part where they break into Doe's apartment and find his many journals, which Somerset reads. This is from the book. They were both horrifying and fascinating. Somerset kept picking through them, searching for clues and nuggets, gradually piecing together a portrait of John Doe's psyche. Somerset hadn't left the room since he'd brought Mills in to see it hours ago. Doe's writings, his musings, his philosophies, his thumbnail sketches, it all scared the shit out of Somerset. But not because it was bizarre and grotesque, because on a certain level, Somerset agreed with Doe. Doe was sick of all the dehumanising crap people were forced to put up with these days, just like Somerset. The only difference was, Somerset had chosen to escape, while Doe opted for the big statement. In his own demented way, he was taking the braver course, Somerset felt. He wasn't turning his back on the problems he saw, he was trying to change things with a great big wake-up call that no one could ignore. Later he thinks about reading them in bed and worries about them corrupting him. And when some noisy kids disrupt him outside, he has to check himself as he gets up, grabs his gun, and ponders if he was about to go and shoot them like Doe would. But the big standout difference is going to be the ending. There are alternative endings on the DVD, and this has some similarities to those, but it also is his own take on where the story goes. The first difference is as John Doe reveals that Mills' wife's head is in the box, Mills rams his gun into Doe's eye socket, and Somerset reacts by placing his gun on the back of Mills' neck, saying he can't let him do it. There's a lot more dialogue here and the scene plays out for longer, with Mills saying they can claim Doe made a run for it and they shot him and they can make up the details later. He even rips off his bulletproof vest and shirt to destroy the microphone he's wearing so no one hears. And Doe keeps begging to be killed and saying more awful things, eventually revealing his wife was pregnant, which leads to this fantastic section, which, as a warning, is a bit gruesome, but if you're wanting to find out more about the movie Seven, you've got this far, so you should be okay. Here we go. Mills furrowed his brow in confusion. Then the horror dawned on him. Doe looked shocked. "You didn't know?" Mills' lips trembled, his hand shaking wildly as he held the gun to the killer's forehead. A wave of fatigue suddenly descended over Somerset. His arms were so tired he dropped the gun to his side. "If you kill him, David, he wins." Doe closed his eyes, hands clasped in prayer. The gun rattled in Mills' shaking hands. "Okay, he wins." The gun went off, and the top of Doe's head flew off as he toppled backward. Bloody chunks littered the dusty road. The rest of the story is different too. We find out Mills will go on trial and will go to prison, but won't get the maximum sentence because of the mitigating circumstances. Somerset says Doe won and took 9 lives, and he changes his mind about retirement, with the very last lines of the book saying he knew he could never leave now. With Mills gone, someone had to stay to fight the fight. Home media extras. I'll talk about the sort of sequel in a moment, but before that, after the movie came out in cinemas in 95, we got it on VHS, DVD and Laserdisc in 1996. But it was a 2-disc special edition DVD in 2000 that had not only a remastered version created from a scan of the original film negative, but also extra features. These included extended and deleted scenes, nothing too crazy or that changed too much, just mostly additional moments that expand the events, along with storyboards for an alternate ending and production photos, along with 4 commentary tracks, one with Fincher, Pitt and Freeman, another with Fincher, the writer and a film professor, and an audio special mix of just music and effects with commentary by composer Howard Shore and the sound team. It was released on Blu-ray in 2010, but in 2023, Fincher announced he was working on a 4K remaster. It would be taken from the original negative, and the director promised not to alter the content apart from enhancing some visual elements and conceal flaws revealed by the high resolution. It was released in January 2025 with a steelbook option. If you want more Seven on screen, this is your best bet. Legacy. The film has had a huge impact on cinema. Film critic Peter Travers said Seven transcended the conventions of the genre and became a cultural milestone. Quotes, "The film reinvented the psychological thriller, elevating it to an artistic and emotionally impactful level." Roger Ebert said, "The film left an indelible mark on the history of cinema and on those who had the privilege of seeing it." It spawned a wave of similar movies, from thrillers like Kiss the Girls and The Bone Collector to the horrors of Saw and its sadistic killer. 9 Inch Nails became movie go-tos on the likes of Resident Evil and Final Destination, and it became trendy to have dirty, foreshadowing style opening montages. No doubt either that it influenced 2022's The Batman and 2002's Red Dragon, but it also helped the careers of all involved, as well as see Fincher go on to direct 97's possibly superior The Game, Fight Club in 99, and Panic Room in 2002, as well as many others. Many have tried to copy Seven's recipe, but none have really ever got it to taste quite this good. 8. The sequel. Yes, there was a proposed sequel to Seven called, incredibly, 8, with a little 8 in the number. But David Fincher wanted nothing to do with it, saying, quotes, "I would be less interested in that than I would in having cigarettes put out in my eyes." Now, why would he say that? Seven was great, and if people want more, well, wait until you hear the pitch for it, which New Line Cinema announced in 2002. The script wasn't written as a sequel, it was a script that New Line bought because they thought it seemed similar and could make into a sequel. The only problem is it needed Freeman's Detective Somerset character to suddenly be a psychic medium, which, to anyone who's seen Seven, is a ridiculous fucking great wall of barrier to making this movie work.
That's what I mean.
The plot would have detectives trying to catch a psychic killer who can see the future, and Somerset would go toe-to-toe in the psychic stakes to stop him. Freeman wasn't interested and Pitt's character wasn't included. Neither were interested anyway. Some claim Fincher was at an early stage interested and attached to direct, but removed himself over casting and creative differences. I'm not convinced. And if you're thinking, I'd quite like to see that movie, then you can. Sort of. It eventually got made in 2015 as a film called Solace, with Anthony Hopkins as the Somerset character and Colin Farrell as the killer. Not really a spoiler there because it's in the trailer, which, if you watch it, does have a little watered-down Seven vibe about it. The movie was both a critical and commercial failure. What's in the box? I'm going to end on a ridiculous one that I personally am very sceptical about. But according to... oh God, I don't know if I can bring myself to even talk about this. According to a ghostwriter and film analyst on TikTok, you can see Gwyneth Paltrow's head that was meant to be in the box in Seven but never shown in another movie. For fuck's sake. Lee Justine says, the creators of Seven actually did intend to show us Gwyneth Paltrow's severed head, but in the end they decided it would build up more tension and mystery if we just never saw it. I am personally curious to see the prop that they created, and if you are too, you can, as long as you watch the movie Contagion, because the prop for Seven was actually used in Contagion. In the scene where Gwyneth Paltrow's character has an autopsy done on her, they have to, cut into her head. And since they already had a perfectly good unused prop of Gwyneth Paltrow's severed head, they just used that for the scene in Contagion. Now, there's only one problem with this theory, and that problem is it's utter bullshit. Someone took 1 + 1 and tried to make 7, because Seven director David Fincher was asked about the rumour this year. He said, and I quote, "No, it's entirely ridiculous. I think we had a 7 or 8 pound shot bag, which is like a sandbag used to secure tripods or light stands and stuff on film sets." He then talked about how they used Paltrow's body mass index to calculate the weight of her head and added, quotes, "And we did put a wig in there so that when Morgan rips the box open, if there were some of that tape that was used to seal the box, I think it was a shot bag and a wig, and I think the wig had a little bit of blood in it, so some of the hair would stick together. Remember, I think Morgan opened 16 or 17 of those things. But as I always say, you don't need to see what's in the box if you have Morgan Freeman." So there you go, from the horse's mouth. Honestly, these people talking about movies, they're out there making YouTube videos, TikToks and podcasts. You can't trust them. You lie! Anyway, join me and AJ next week for the main Rewind show, as we'll be staying in 1995 to talk about a film where we get a masterclass in acting from two guys trying not to start World War III from their underwater metal sausage. I cannot wait. Sorry about the mess. See you next time.